So at this point, may I call now on Congressman Belaro just in time for his time slot. It remains at 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to our resource persons on DOJ. Your Honors. My first question po is for Secretary Guevara. I have this advocacy for the protection of our prosecutors because of late they have been subject of killings, harassment, and this also goes for the judges. In fact, this representation filed a resolution in aid, resolution in calling for an investigation in aid of legislation on the death of Fiscal Velasco. Now, I note that the good secretary was interviewed, and when he was asked the question about the possible funding for this matter, he was quoted as saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Secretary, that we cannot rely on armors, but just on the armory of God. So may I ask, perhaps that's true with respect to the 2017 budget, but for the 2019 budget, this is my specific question. Is there any provision in the budget that could possibly be a source of funding for that matter?
The Secretary?
There's none, Your Honor. There's none.
There's none. I would like to alert you to the proposed NEP. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a budget of support operations in the amount of 5,535,459. Could this be a possible source of funding for this matter? Because I know that the NBI and even the policemen have protective vests. Perhaps could this be a possible source of funding for this protective vest for our prosecutors?
May I refer the question to our guy who is the expert on budget matters, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, sir. Under the NEP, the funding, the capital outlay funding for the DOJ OSEC is only for ICT equipment software under the MITI. And that's why the Secretary stated that at the present state of our NEP, there is no source of funding for that military equipment or armor.
Yusek, but the question is that, did your office request for it?
We did not request for it, sir.
Mr. Chair, let it be on the record that this representation is manifesting that perhaps the committee could look into this matter.
Right.
Thank you. My second question is with respect to the Bureau of Corrections. Ito pong representasyon na ito ay nag-advocate din para sa kapakanan ng ating mga prisoners. And I think one of the matters that was raised, ventilated during the Bilibid hearings was that they have very poor provisions. Now my question is with respect to special provisions. Under the GAA of 2018, there's a provision there for subsistence and medicine allowance of prisoners. And if may I quote, the amounts appropriated herein shall cover daily subsistence and medicine allowance at 60 pesos and 10 pesos respectively for 46,495 assumed number of prisoners for the year. My question, Mr. Secretary, is that, or perhaps the sir from the Bureau of Corrections, is that this is a fixed number. What happens if the number of prisoners would increase within the year? Are you prepared for that contingency?
Bucor? Yes, sir.
With the permission of the Secretary, sir. Yes, sir, we are prepared for this. Actually, the budget, sir, is per capita. 60 pesos for food and 10 pesos for medicine. So, whichever is the number of inmates, we are prepared for that because we usually provide for buffer to estimate the increase in the number of inmates, Your Honor.
So, sir, we are assuming here that there will be no more inmates in the following year because that is already a fixed budget.
every we always provide for the probable increase, Your Honor. So there was never a problem in the past. Nagkulang yung budget, Your Honor.
Nagkakasya na lang po.
So may contingency.
No, Your Honor. Talagang may provided budget. Per capita po ito.
Contingency, calamity.
Mr. Chair, let me draw the attention of our resource persons to another special provision in the budget of the GAA 2018. That is with respect to the revolving fund for agri-industrial projects. Ito pong special provision na ito, nagsasabi na itong pondo na ito para lang doon sa purpose na nakalagay doon sa batas. And this revolving fund that I'm referring to is specifically earmarked for the following: payment of allowance to prisoners working in agricultural industrial projects at a rate of not less than 500 pesos for each prisoner per month. And number 2, payment of additional subsistence allowance of prisoners in the National Penitentiary. Tanong ko po, how much portion of this revolving fund is actually spent for our prisoners in consonance with this number 2 provision in their special provision?
Your Honor, sir, may I refer you please to our finance officer.
Permission to speak, Your Honor. Sir, our programmed appropriations for the subsistence of inmates is based on a population of 47,000, whereas our current population is only 42,000. Therefore, our appropriation is enough to cover the subsistence of inmates, and our augmentation from Fund 284 is not yet being utilized. It is just a backup fund.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this representation wishes that this committee look into the matter. Thank
Yes,
you, sir.
Your Honor. And I guess I will ask the Secretary to probably have a management audit in terms of the financial aspects of our jail system.
Proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd like to ask representative from the Land Registration Authority. Sir. Sino po ba? Sir, yung pong nababalita po sa dyaryo at sa media is that, at natutuwa po ako, is that you are spearheading the computerization of land titles. It's very good. It's very laudable, in fact. Because marami ho ngayong nangyayari na mga titulo kinokopya. But I'd like to ask, meron po ba kayong budget for this?
May I ask my deputy to answer the question, Your Honor?
For the information of the good congressman, our computerization project is dubbed as the LTCP, Land Title Computerization Program. It was bidded out year 2000. It became operationalized 2008. It is a pure PPP. No single centavo coming from the government.
So, PPP po ito?
Yes.
So, hindi po siya...
Opo.
Why don't you make it part of the proposed budget? Why make it PPP?
This is a
Sir.
huge project, Your Honor. This is a huge project. When the proponent submitted its bid, it amounted to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 9 billion. That was 2000. The project nowadays, it has evolved into a more complicated, more applications were introduced,
Banking system.
more infrastructure in terms of IT, in terms of software
Stock market.
were introduced. With all due respect, Your Honor, I think that is the very reason why PPP has been introduced, because I believe, honestly, that the government cannot sustain this kind of project. Number 2, a computerization project would require immediate turnover of equipments. Like a simple printer, for example, would conk out in the RD of, let's say, Catanduanes. If you put it in the national budget and the GAA, it would take you 90 days for the procurement calendar. But with a private investor, it would take them 2 minutes to call central office, to call their central headquarters. Oh, bigyan mo kami dito ng printer. And then the next flight, andun na yung printer. And hindi ko naman sa minamata yung resources ng government. But because of these very quintessential constraints, kaya nga po, ito po yung proyekto.
But Mr. Chair, would the good undersecretary agree that this requires, this would be a very confidential matter, that we should not just relegate it to the private sector? This would require, you know, a highly confidential nature, and it would be unwise to make this a subject of PPP. Anyway, before you answer that, sir, let me just point out the background, because I noted that in your proposed budget, there is no provision for capital outlay. And I understand that capital outlay, that already subsumes the IT expenses. And I was also looking at your personal services, which might subsume that, and you have, I think, very little amount for that. And I guess if you are really serious about it, then you should have some preparation for it by way of itemizing an expense for that PPP, if indeed that is a serious concern of your department, sir.
That is a real observation, Your Honor. That is a real observation. As a matter of fact, if the NEP, the President's budget, slashed our capital outlay, that would have included several infrastructure projects like our upgrading our central office, building of new RD buildings in the provinces. If the President in the NEP slashed it, it's no longer our problem. All right?
Did
Now,
you request for it?
yes, we propose it. As a matter of fact, in our MITHI project, which is a project geared towards computerization, malaki rin po yung pinopose namin. And what did the, well, NEP. Ano po yung sinabi ng NEP?
Mapapagalitan ng secretary mo sa comments mo.
30,
You're
sir?
not supposed to, It's enough that it was cut, period.
Yeah, it was
Thank
last.
you.
It was cut.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can I just make a clarification on the transparency issue, Your Honor? Yung pong computerization namin, we manage the operation. All right? We are under control of the database. Okay? The proponent is a mere vendor. Sila lang po yung vendor. They assist the proponent assist our RDs nationwide. Kaya po yung transparency, kami po yung may hawak ng database. Thank you po.
Thank you. But I just wish that this representation just wishes that you have fought for it. It's a different thing to request it, and it's a different thing to fight for it. Anyway, Mr. Chair,
Fought
with
it,
the
Your Honor.
manifestation that...
Thank you. Would you like to continue and move for
Yes,
the
yes.
termination?
Not yet, Your Honor. With the
You have, anyway, I'll give you.
with the manifestation, Mr. Chair, that the committee may kindly take a look also at this matter. May I proceed to my question to the office of the
On your
Citizen?
behalf, I am, the committee asked the Honorable Secretary to make, a financial review of the 18-year PPP program on the land titling and of the LRA. So, para makita lang if, lalong-lalo na ngayon na ayaw ng gobyerno ng PPP, baka maka-enlighten na baka we should take a second look. Tumango naman si Secretary, put it on record that they will conduct it. Kasi kung kayo, syempre, biased kayo because it's your program. But I think the department, as your supervisory authority, I think can do, pwede na naman. Sa Congressman Belaro again, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My question to the Office of the Solicitor General, sir. Yung pong one of the complaints against the Office of the Solicitor General is that medyo may mga time po na mabagal yung response. And perhaps one reason is that kulang po yung tao. And I noted that in your staffing summary, in the proposed budget, hindi po nagbago yung ating staff. Yung 2017, you have 988 yung authorized positions compared to total number of field positions of 721. Now, in 2018 po, ganun din po, 988 to 721. How do you explain this, Soljen?
Your Honor, with due respect, the Solicitor General is not here. But to answer your two questions po, una, we take strong exception to the statement na mabagal po ang Solgen. Wala po kaming naririnig na ganong comment within our ranks, sir. And modesty aside, with the present dispensation po, all the cases that were filed, policy cases at that, before the Supreme Court, the Solicitor General has won. And second po, insofar as the plantilla positions are concerned, sir, there is a marked difference po between 2017 and 2018 because we're trying our best to fill up the 5 legal divisions out of 30. So marami po kaming na-hire, sir, in order to augment our complement. And it is the marching orders po of the Solicitor General to fill up 100%. As a matter of fact, in our bill that we sought before this Honorable Congress po, we're still asking for 20 new legal divisions to help us out. But then again, we're trying our best to hire in the fastest way that we can. But there are some constraints po because we just don't want to hire any Tom, Dick, and Harry or any lawyer for that matter. We want to attract the best and the brightest lawyers for our office so that we can serve the government in the best way possible din po, including Congress, sir. Congressman?
Yes, Yusek, I appreciate that response. But the records cannot fool us. It's 988 minus 721. How do you explain that? 267 unfilled positions for the past 2 years.
Baka kulang na ng abogadong graduate ng Sambeda. Yun ang sagot ko dyan.
Mr. Chair, if the good Undersecretary is not yet ready with this response, may I just request that this office as well as the committee be furnished a more expanded
Yes,
answer.
thank you very
on that.
much.
But last question, Mr. Chair, last question. I noticed in the budget also of the Department of Justice that you have a portion for earmark revenues and off-budget accounts. Earmark revenues, ito po yung mga under existing laws na yung proceeds po ay para lang sa ganung pondo. Like for example, the victims compensation, yung sa PCGG, LRA, PCGG. And yun naman po mga off-budget accounts, ito po yung wala sa budget. Pero po, malaking pera din ito. May I just request, Mr. Chair, that this office, as well as the committee, be furnished a report for the past 2 years on the status of these earmarked revenues in off-budget accounts. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Salamat po.
The Secretary is hereby instructed to comply and to provide both this committee as well as, of course, Congressman Belaro.
We shall do so, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.